Yes, could you tell us quite, explicitly what exactly was illegal about the process that the DSS employed?
Now, that's a great question, and that's what I was trying to say to you. If you look at the Constitution says you have a right to privacy. Now, that could be interpreted into so many areas. The law says you have to have a search warrant. Issuance of search warrant must be based on certain things. One, but somebody signed that search warrant. Yeah. Like we heard in the report that the officer said we had orders. You don't break into people's homes on orders of somebody. You have to have reasonable reasons to do so. That's what we don't know now. That's what's casting doubts now. And I give the example of all the places that I know. That may not be the case here, because we know in Nigeria, whether you obtain the evidence by fraud, by criminality, it don't matter. So long as you get to the court and the judge, you have evidence. It's a dangerous, it's what they call a slippery slope, banana peel approach. Because that actually gives the power to law enforcement officers to do whatever. They beat up witnesses to obtain confession, and so on and so forth. But if you ask me, it serves the judiciary right. Because the judiciary should have been looking at this particular aspect. And don't say, well, whichever way you obtain evidence, it's like cutting off your nose. You present that, it actually runs against the grain of justice. If you obtain evidence in any other way than what is in the law. And when you issue search warrant, it must be based on something. They're not destroying evidence. You could have invited them over and questioned them. You could have said something. And now the public is looking at it and saying, you are doing sentimental enforcement of the law. Because now it's all over TV, and the presidency is issuing statements and so on and so forth. Now, judicial officers are arrested in other places other than Nigeria. Okay? And what you look at, the judiciary is a special aspect of the society. That is the last defense for anyone against intimidation, oppression by the government. And if you go against the judiciary in such a way, what is going into people's psyches? We are not safe.
If at the same time, while they carry this out, and then they also broke down the doors of a minister's house also came down, and then the same kind of arrest was carried out at the same time. Would there be any sort of doubts on the part of the public saying, well, okay, maybe they're doing their jobs here?
But like the vice president said, issue of corruption in Nigeria is very existential. Okay, it affects us. It affects the progress of the country, and that's a bitter truth. But regardless of who it happens to, there's equality before the law, regardless of whether it's a judge or a minister or you or me. So long as the law says we have that right, you can't just violate it. It destroys your objective of fighting corruption.
But the way it is now, because there's this, it does appear as though, number one, there's frustration from the members of the public because they want to see anywhere that you have this kind of cases of corruption wherein a case starts in court, it doesn't end until who knows how long. That needs to be dealt with.
Yes.
Then you have on the part of security agencies too, they also need to get to court and get conviction, which we haven't seen. And so could it be that we should also look in the way of our laws? If we don't do some sort of reforms, either amending the laws to ensure that we could get cases convicted in good time, we may be going around in cycles.
But you're so correct in that, and I agree with you. We have to have I'm talking about fundamental changes in our laws. The last time I appeared, I give an example. You cannot be practicing a U.S. form of democracy and still sit down and rely on the British colonial laws. You're putting a square peg in a round hole. You're trying to force it. So we have to look inwards in the judiciary and look at those aspects that we need to change. And there are many of them. Look, it was when I went to law school that I learned that judges were still writing their judgments in longhand. If you imagine somebody sitting down there writing, and I've seen it, And a judge actually told me that, look, if I don't, and I said, why are you doing this? I mean, you have a laptop. I said, no. If I don't write it in longhand, that is basis for an appeal. Can you imagine somebody carrying going to appeal and say, oh, the judge type his judgment. So you have basic things in there. Even the new Administrative Justice Act, I look at it, there are areas where we have to deal with. In the meantime, what is uppermost? What must be? And I know the perception out there. You know, I've been in court and I saw one young man who was accused of stealing his cell phone or something, and he's been in detention for 2 years. And I approached the prosecutor and said, come on, what's going on in here? You know, my sister who was with me said, what are you asking? Look at him. He actually, why did he steal a phone? He looks like a thief. I'm like, okay, the guy has not been proven guilty yet. Yes, every evidence that you collect, but we can't just sit down here and say these judges are guilty based on what the DSS has said. There's a process for proving people guilty in court. Until then, the law says they are innocent until proven guilty.
Okay, that's a fine place to anchor. Mr. Sobo believes that, yes, they have to do what they have to do, but within the ambits of the law. Mr. Muyiwa Sobo is a legal practitioner. Thank you for coming on this morning.
And thanks for having me.
All right, then we'll be back in a moment. Don't go away.